which kind of a unique religion that probably you won't witness to a lot of people, but you never know. You might be in that position at some time, and so it might help you. The whole reason we're doing this is to just get a better idea of these religions. And this one, Hinduism, is number 3 worldwide religion. So behind Christianity and Islam, it's number 3. So, and it's growing rapidly. As you know, probably India, they've a lot of kids. It's always growing. Same with Islam, same type of thing. So you're very fast. Probably will pass Christianity. Christianity, when they say pass Christianity, Christianity includes any denomination that we know, as well as that includes Catholicism and all of those as well. So it's really a big religion. Has anyone, I won't ask you any questions as far as that, but anyone ever witnessed to a Hindu before? Okay, so see, it is rare, and it's not very popular in America, but you might run into, you never know. So the more I studied Hinduism, when I first started studying Hinduism, I was like, it's a very interesting study. And I was thinking, man, I don't know any of this. And it was really difficult to study. And now, after I've studied for so long, I still have no idea what they're talking about half the time. So we're kind of going to go through the basics of Hinduism. We're not going to go super deep. If you went super deep, it doesn't really make any sense. So we're kind of getting an idea of what the basic Hindu believes. It used to be a little bit more, it's like any religion, it's kind of modernized now. It slowly, not as quickly as something like Catholicism, where Catholicism, basically anything goes. You could basically do whatever you want. You barely have to go to church. It's not quite that far, but there's some sacrifices that used to happen that they don't do anymore. There's some of those things that probably you wouldn't really be even allowed to do today. And I'll mention like one or two. But all right, so okay, go back, forward one. Okay, so introduction to Hinduism. Hinduism is the religion of the majority of people in India and Nepal. So there are 1.2 billion adherents in the worldwide, so that's how many followers there are. Just in India alone, 1.1 billion just in India. So that's basically most of India believes in Hinduism. So it exists among multiple populations as well, but those are the main two. In some ways, Hinduism is claimed to be the oldest living religion in the world, or at least elements within it which stretch back thousands of years. So we would probably say that Christianity is, especially Judaism, Catholicism, not so much. That's kind of more after Christ, but very old religion. And not only is the actual religion old, the texts actually go farther than that. So 2300 BC, or 2300 to 1500 BC was kind of when it all kind of came together and people started actually believing it. The scriptures and were kind of started creating like 4,000 to 6,000 is what some claim. So pretty old. Most date its origins somewhere between 23 to 1500. So the holy texts are said to be older than that. Yet Hinduism resists easy definition, partly because of the vast array of practices and beliefs found within it. So it's such a broad religion, and there's so many different branches off of it that they don't really have a defining dates for it. It's kind of like, well, especially when you get actually into creation of the earth, but just in the religion itself, it's still a little bit funny as far as when it was actually started. But this is basically when it was kind of brought together here. So it is most closely associated conceptually and historically with the other Indian religions, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. I don't know how to say that one. So you just 2 weeks ago was Buddhism, right? So some of you here. So basically, Buddhism is a branch off of Hinduism. So most of these religions are kind of come off of Hinduism. And we're going to see some correlations between Christianity as well. And what I want you to do kind of as we go through this is basically take what you know on Christianity and most religions and kind of throw it out the window, because when it comes to understanding this, that helps you in no way, basically. Very opposite of anything Christian. They'll say that Christians actually Christianity came from Hinduism as well. So unlike most other religions, Hinduism has no single founder, no single scripture, and no commonly agreed set of teachings, which we would kind of say the same thing as far as we don't have a man that we follow, especially a dead man. We've Christ, but he is God, and he is not dead. So they would also say, well, we don't follow one man either. So it's kind of unique, which most religions you can base it back to some person. Throughout its extensive history, there has been many key figures teaching different philosophies and writing numerous holy books. For these reasons, writers often refer to Hinduism as a way of life or a family of religions rather than a single religion. It's so broad, so vast as far as what you can believe, what you're allowed to believe, and we're going to get into some of it, but basically, rather than even saying, well, it's a single belief, it's multiple beliefs. And we're going to see that in a second when we get to the gods part of it. The origins of Hinduism, we'll go through this real quick. So unlike most major religions, it does not have a central figure upon whom it is founded. Rather, it is a complex faith with roots stemming back thousands of years to the people in the Indus Valley. So this is kind of when it was brought together. Now part of Pakistan, the Aryan tribes of Persia invaded the Indus Valley around 1700 BC, and the groups merged and Hinduism kind of began. This part, I won't read it necessarily, but basically their neighboring country, how the word Hinduism came to be, their neighboring country was along the river Sindhu, which the neighboring country couldn't pronounce that, and they called them Hindu, and eventually that kind of stuck, and that's how they got Hindu. So Hindu is not even an Indian word. It actually started kind of just from them. So these are their major beliefs. We're going to get into each one a little bit more, but I kind of want to just give you a broad idea. This is probably when you want to write down. If you're going to write something down, this is their core beliefs, and this is what you're mostly going to get out of this. And we're not going to be able to get too deep into some of it. Beliefs about sacred matters, God, soul, and cosmos are essential to one's approach to life. Hindus believe many diverse things, but there are a few bedrock concepts on which most Hindus agree on. Hindus believe in one all-pervasive supreme being who is both immanent and transcendent, both creator and in unmanifest reality. So we'll get to that in a second, but they have God, and they have one God. However, it is probably the most polytheistic religion out there, and it depends on who you ask. Most will accept the fact that, yeah, we're very polytheistic. If you get to more of the real traditional believers, they'll probably say no, because we only believe in one God. There's one God, but all the other gods are from the one God. So we'll explain that in a second. Hindus believe in the divinity of the four Vedas, so this is important. The world's most ancient scripture, and venerate the Agamas, we're not even going to get into that, actually. Texts which are equally revealed. Another form of text. These primordial hymns are God's word and the bedrock of Sanatana, eternal Dharma, the eternal religion. Dharma is another important word, but we're going to get into that. Again, these are kind of just their beliefs, and we're going to explain them in a little bit more detail, but so bear with me. Hindus believe that the universe undergoes endless cycles of creation, preservation, and dissolution. Hindus, so reincarnation. Basically, that's a big part of their religion. Hindus believe in karma, another huge part of their religion. The law of cause and effect by which each individual creates his own destiny by his thoughts, words, and deeds. Again, we'll go through that in a little more detail. Hindus believe that the soul reincarnates, evolving through many births until all karmas have been resolved, and moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, is attained. Not a single soul will be deprived of this destiny. So another word in there, moksha, that's kind of the end goal of your life. But the end goal of your life is really far away from, we'll explain that. Hindus believe that the divine being exists in unseen worlds and that the temple worship, rituals, sacraments, and personal devotions create a communion with these devas and gods. So very, very into temple worshiping, into their idols or their gods, and everyone has. Some are kind of along the same page as far as have the same God. Your neighbor could have a totally different God, but it doesn't matter. You believe in the Brahma, which is the God over everything, so it really doesn't matter who you believe in. Hindus believe that an enlightened master or Satguru, spiritual teacher, is essential to know the transcendent absolute as our personal disciples, or personal discipline, good conduct, purification, pilgrimage, self-inquiry, meditation, and surrender in God. Very important in their religion. So the enlightened master or the Satguru is their spiritual teacher. He is the one who gets these things from, we're going to see the word in a second, Brahma, which is God. So they're the only ones who receive this. So technically, in the end, does it come from a man? You are trusting these men, but they were born into this position, and you are supposed to believe them. Each cycle through generations, you have a new set of them. So you kind of have your original ones, and they don't usually go too much off of that, but you have your main spiritual leaders, and then branches off after that. And they're allowed to change some things, allowed to add some things to the scriptures. Hindus believe that all life is sacred, to be loved, revered, and therefore practice ahimsa, non-injury in thought, word, and deed. Avoidance of harming any living creature. And we'll get into that too, because that part's a little thing, that's part of the changing in Hinduism. Hindus believe that no religion teaches the only way to salvation above all others, but that genuine paths are facets of God's light, deserving tolerance and understanding. So very accepting of, if you come in and say, well, I believe this, they'll probably say, very good. That's okay. As long as you're doing the things that God requires you to do and that you're supposed to do, that's great. So very respectable to anyone and anything, very, especially even animals, because they see animals, plants different than we do. All right, so let's kind of get into this now. So, well, here's a quick map. Basically, India, the dark portion of it is where it started, where the majority of it, and where it's kind of grown, and the arrow is kind of the pathway, but definitely spread pretty far. And again, really, you can find parts of the religion in all countries, but that's kind of where it's based. So why are there so many Hindu gods? So Hindus actually only believe in one God, Brahma. So the eternal origin, who is the cause and foundation of all existence. So even right before I came here, you can look up Brahma and kind of try and find a definition of who Brahma really is. and you can't really, even if you find one, it's not really understandable. So basically, Brahma is everything. So Brahma is in everything. There is nothing without him. So he is, what comes from him are all the gods. He is in every plant. He's in every person. He's in every item in the universe, basically. He is the universe. So the gods of the Hindu faith represent different forms of Brahma. So this is how he takes kind of a person. He is impersonal, so he doesn't have a form. If you looked up Brahma, there's no description of him because there is no way to describe him. He doesn't exist really, but yet he exists everywhere. So physically, there's nothing, but how he portrays himself is through gods. And that's how the gods, their main ones start and then branches down. So these gods are sent to help people find the universal God, Brahma. So it's these gods that help find Brahma. But in the end, it's a little confusing because if Brahma doesn't really exist as anything, where do you actually go? It's very confusing. Most Hindus have a personal god or goddess, such as Shiva, Krishna, or Lakshmi, whom they pray regularly. So these are a couple of them, but you'll have your main gods, and that's where you get your denominations, as we would call them. For us, it's kind of like, okay, well, we believe in this portion of the scriptures, and we believe more in this portion of the scriptures. Scripture-wise, if you take the Bible, you think the Bible's a big book, you take all the scriptures, it's probably like 20 times the Bible. One of just their poems is 5 times the size of the Bible. So very big, very broad. Mostly it's a lot of like hymns and poetry, and then a lot of war things. The war things are too deep to even really bother about talking about. Most Hindus have, so the Trimurti, which, does that ring a bell? So, Trimurti, 3. You have 3 most important Hindu gods, forms of Brahmans. You have the Trinity. We have the Trinity. You have you have God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of their that's kind of their version of it. You have Brahma, which is known as the creator, Vishnu, known as the preserver, and Shiva, known as the destroyer. So Brahma was kind of the first one that was, yet kind of at the same time Shiva was. So it's funny because you actually, through the scriptures, you have them like talking to each other and then having like an argument in some of these scriptures. And then they turn into certain animals and do certain things, and it's really nuts as far as what they do. But basically, Brahma was kind of the original one. Many today have kind of veered off of him. Brahmanism, it's kind of stuck to its tradition, which had a lot of things that modern day wise they didn't really like. So kind of went. Plus, it wasn't quite as fun. If you're gonna believe in a god, I guess probably wasn't the most fun guy to believe in, and we'll maybe discuss that in a little bit. But so Shiva's kind of, Vishnu and Shiva are kind of the ones that are branched off of more modern today. So you have Brahma, the creator god. Brahma, don't get that confused with Brahman. So Brahman is God, uppercase G, Brahma, lowercase g. So physical, not physical. He has 4 faces, the creator of the 4 Vedas, one from each of his mouth. Vedas is their main holy scriptures. While Brahma is often credited as the creator of the universe and various things in it, several Puranas described him being born from a lotus emerging from the navel of the god Vishnu. I got a little video that if we have time, might play it. If not, won't. But it's kind of crazy. Basically, how the earth was started. So a lotus emerged from the navel of the god Vishnu. and suggests that he was born from Shiva in his aspects. So some say he was from Shiva, which he came out of the flower. He was the part of the flower, and that's what created the earth. So he is the supreme god in diverse versions of Hindu mythology. Brahma does not enjoy popular worship in present age. As I mentioned before, Hinduism has lesser importance than the other members, Trimurti, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is revered in ancient texts, yet rarely worshipped as a primary deity in India. Very few temples dedicate him to him existence in India. So he kind of just was still a main god, but at the same time, not many worship him. Then you have Vishnu, the preserver god. Incarnates as 10 avatars, descends including Rama, featured in the Ramayana, which, so Rama's kind of basically, same with Krishna, they're stories that basically what they went through are ways to live by. So Rama, I don't know if I have another slide about that, but Rama basically, him and his wife, they went through, I think I do have another slide, so I'll explain that in a minute. And then you have each shown with their escort, Sita and Radha, so their wives, I guess you would call them. Shiva, god of constructive destruction. I had to put constructive part in there. So when it's needed. Appears as Shiva Nataraj, lord of the dance of creation, and with his wife Parvati, the son Ganesha, the elephant-headed remover of obstacles. That's kind of a weird branch to go off of. If you ever want to study it, go ahead. I don't have any more on it. As far as the elephant, basically they have a kid who takes items out of earth. And I don't know the whole reason behind it and all, but basically that's his power and that's what he does. So kind of a strange thing. The goddesses, the Devi, the feminine divine. So this is not the god, this is the goddesses that they worship. Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, consort of Brahma, so veers off of the god Brahma. Lakshmi, goddess of good fortune and consort of Vishnu, and then Parvati, the divine mother, wife of Shiva. Goddesses, more goddesses, Dharma, protectress, and then Kali, destroyer of demons. So just more kind of we're the start of them. Not, I guess, again, they're all like important in the religion, but some not so much as others. Again, they're the ones who kind of started everything. These are the gods and the goddesses that represent Brahma. So what they do is what Brahma is and what Brahma represents. And then you have, so amount of deities. So through the scriptures, it's a little bit mixed up. So it technically says there's 33, and then some turn that into 33 million, and then some turn that into 330 million. So different gods, basically, and goddesses. So really, in the end, it's up to debate how many gods and goddesses there are. But if Brahma is in everything, then technically you're allowed to worship most things, especially if they're living. And if you're able to believe and worship most living things, then 330 million really isn't actually as crazy as it sounds. But really, so again, polytheistic, I would say so. So all these deities are but manifest forms, attributes, and functions of the impersonal Brahma. So you gotta understand that. That's why there's no picture of Brahma, but these are his manifestations, basically. So you have the sacred texts and traditional tales, which is we'll go through those. There's a couple ones that you actually be able to look at. The Hindu Holy Scriptures are mainly comprised of the following works written in the Sanskrit language. So that was kind of, the Sanskrit language is what started in the beginning. So most of these, the Vedas are all in that language. So because they're the oldest. So basically, if you ever, it's been translated now, but those were the originals, and they actually have a lot of the originals too. So you have 4 of the Vedas, which we'll go to the next slide for that. So you have the Vedas, and then you have the Upanishads. These consider the nature of the individual soul, Atman, and the universal soul, Brahman. So, Atman. Atman is as we have a soul, so do they. Atman is the person's soul. So, when you reincarnate, your soul lives on, your soul never dies, your body dies. So, whatever you were reincarnated next time, that's where your soul is still the same, but your body changes. So that's what Atman is. If you ever see that in all the slides, that's what you know it's referencing. So one of the Upanishads contains the earliest reference to the reincarnation of the soul in different bodies, transmigration of the soul. Then you have the Shrumidas. The tradition are the laws of Manu. Again, more text. We might expound a little bit on that one. Here we go. So the Ramayana, which is, again, kind of a story. Part of the text, they're all different. A lot of them can be hymns, can be poems, stories, war, anything. Ways to worship, all those things. So this one's a very popular one in the religion. This is basically like, this is the way you want to live, based on his life. So he contains the story of Rama and his devoted wife Sita. She is kidnapped by the demon king Ravana, but is later freed by Rama with the help of the monkey god Hanuman. The poem is about how good will always triumph over evil, and Rama and Sita are held up as role models for the perfect husband and wife. So if you want to live that life, that's what you're going to look at. As you could tell, it's obviously not a real story. I've never seen a monkey god before, but you see his little sidekick, he looks like a monkey. So basically it's just a fictional story that, well, to them it's their god, that, or is actually, I don't know if it's a prince, but came from a god. So, and that's how most people want to live their life, is based on that story. Then you have the Mahabharata, the epic poem telling the story of war between 2 branches of a family. The Bhagavad Gita, you say it a million times, and then you mess it up, forms part of this and means the song of God. So I don't have any more explanations of that, but the Bhagavad Gita is a story basically of a prince and another, not a prince, an avatar, and basically they have to go and kill some of their family and their relatives and such, and the avatar doesn't want to, but the prince tells him, well, you got to remember, your soul doesn't die, so we're not killing their soul, we're just killing their bodies. And this is we're going to get to Dharma. So this is what we're supposed to do in our life. If we don't do that, well, then instead of the good karma, instead we're going to go into your reincarnation is going to be the opposite of a good. So I'll explain that in a little bit more detail as far as the Dharma portion of it. But basically, it's just kind of a story that kind of defines what the belief is. So you don't have to worry, because this is what we're supposed to do. And if you don't do this, even though it's hard and it's not something you want to do, you have to, otherwise it is going to hurt your soul. So kind of just a story that shows a little bit about the religion as far as how it believes. And that's something I would suggest maybe looking up. That's a popular one that a lot of Hindus like to base things off of in their lives. So then you have the Puranas, the collection of ancient tales about the different incarnations and the lives of saints. There are 18 in all, and to mention a few, I'm not going to mention them because they're too hard to read. So those are some of the popular ones, though. So reincarnation, the lives of the saints. So these are more about the actual lives of souls rather than a god, which the gods don't die. So this is more some of those popular ones that if you ever wanted to look at. So the Vedas are the oldest religious texts in Hinduism. The word Vedas means knowledge. It is believed that the Vedas were orally revealed by Brahma to certain sages who heard them and passed them down in an oral tradition. They were not written down, but in fact were prohibited to do so. So I guess, I don't know, maybe a question of whether or not how legit they are. You're telling your kids, and then they're telling their kids, or you're telling the next, I guess, more the sages, the spiritual leaders under them, and that's how it got for so long. And that's up until you got the Vedas. So how much of that got swapped around, I'm not sure, but kind of strange that, and kind of crazy that they must have been really detailed about it, because when they did eventually write it down, there was a lot to write down. So because of this earliest oral tradition, continuing even now when the Vedas are available in written form, the Vedas are still known to be Shruti, which that which is heard. So one that wasn't written down, but that was until the Vedas were created, but it was oral. So it was told through the spiritual leaders, I guess. There's different names for them. The Vedas are mainly composed of hymns and mantras written in the sacred language. They cover various subjects from nature to everyday life and behavior, and form of the basis of all other religious writings. So these are the main ones. This is where they started, and then all the other scriptures branched off of these or were created after. Not necessarily branched off, but if there was new things that were being told to these leaders, that would be written down. The books are so special that they are often kept in glass cases. So very old, so they want to keep those safe. The four Vedas are the Rig Veda, the oldest and the holiest Veda. Then you have the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. Each Veda is divided into 4 sections. The Samhitas, the oldest portion, contains mantras and hymns and prayers. The Brahmas, the ritualistic teachings, and the Aranakis, or sacrifices, and then the meditational portion. So most of what they believe kind of come from there, as well as the Upanishads, which is more of the mystical and philosophical. They consider the nature of the individual soul Atman, so rather than like the physical things that you do, the rituals that you do to your God or do for your God, this is more of talking about the soul and the universal soul Brahman. So your relation as a soul between you and their God. One of the Upanishads contains the earliest reference to the reincarnation of the soul in different bodies. The Vedas are the law. Most beliefs, concepts, and ceremonies are based on information contained in the Vedas. So very important texts. Okay, so we now get more into a little bit more of the fun stuff. So reincarnation. I'm sure you've heard exactly kind of what it is. According to Hinduism, a soul reincarnates again and again on earth until it becomes perfect and reunites with its source. Again, reunites with its source, not too sure exactly what that means. Basically, you become one with Brahman. So you no longer have to go through reincarnation. And your soul it doesn't really give you a place that you go. You just kind of exist within, same as Brahman, I guess. So you just kind of exist. During this process, the soul enters into many bodies, assumes many forms, and passes through many births and deaths. So, as you can see, kind of where you're starting at, what you're going to go through as you have to go through these reincarnations. We'll go to the next slide before I explain a little bit further on this. Hindus believe in reincarnation. This is also known as samsara. So that's the kind of the if you hear that samsara ever, that's talking about reincarnation, which is the transfer of one's soul after death into another body. This produces a continuing cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth through their many lifetimes. And karma determines how you will live your next life. So through pure acts, thoughts, and devotion, one can be reborn at a higher level. So you're always working on getting to that higher level. So that's kind of where, this religion, it's tough because you don't really see a lot of evangelists out for Hinduism because there's not really much they're offering. If they're really offering something, basically they'd be saying, well, you're going to reincarnate for who knows how long. You could be 1,000 reincarnations. It could be, depends on how well you do through them. So it's kind of a sad that you're just going to keep working through, and if you don't make a mistake on the first one, well, then you're not going to go backwards that far. So eventually one can escape samsara and achieve enlightenment. Bad deeds can cause a person to be reborn as a lower level or even as an animal. So you can become an animal. You can also turn into, technically, I think, a plant. Animal, you're probably going down. You're not going up. And your position or what you become is what you have to deal with. So, let me finish this phrase and I'll explain that. So the unequal distribution of wealth, prestige, suffering are thus seen as natural consequences for one's previous acts, both in this life and the previous lives. So you do something that you probably shouldn't have. You probably didn't follow your dharma, which is the way you were supposed to live, the way you put the position that you were put into in this earth. You didn't follow that. Well, you're probably going to be reincarnated into something a little bit less, and you're going to continue to do so until you learn from that, I guess. And I don't think there's any way you can. I don't think there's like a far back you can go. I know you're trying to achieve something, but I don't know how bad you can be. So when it comes to heaven and hell, is there a heaven and hell? Yes and no. So no eternal heaven and hell. We believe in eternal heaven and hell. They believe in temporary ones. So when you get reincarnated, I'm not sure as far as timelines on it, and they don't either because nobody's ever experienced that. So basically, you could, if based on your karma, if you did something well, you could end up in their version of heaven, which is a good place, or hell, which is you're going to be suffering. But again, how long before you are reincarnated again? I'm not sure how that process works. But there technically is a heaven and hell, but really not in the same way. So if you go to hell, eventually you're going to get out of it, and you'll be able to hopefully fix and that's probably why they believe, you're always working towards becoming, you're doing better rather than worse, is because of the results of worse aren't usually good, especially if you're a certain animal. So then karma. Another major part of their belief. Hindus believe in karma, the law of cause and effect by which each individual creates his own destiny by his thoughts, words, and deeds. So this is kind of taken to another level that we see I'm sure everyone here has heard of karma, but the American version or the modern version of karma is a little bit different. Like, oh, you do some good things. Well, you hope things are going to happen to you in this lifetime that are going to be good. This takes that to just basically another level, that these are really important because these are your destiny, basically. Karma is the accumulation sum of one's goods and bad deeds, and it determines how you will live your next life. Moral behaviors in one life guarantee rebirth in a higher caste. We'll talk about that, the word caste. Immoral behavior automatically drops a reborn soul to a lower caste. So, you obviously want to always improve your life or your soul. So, Dharma. Very important because it kind of explains things that when you first look at Hinduism, it's very confusing. Because you don't understand, well, okay, if I turn into this certain kind of animal, well, how do I determine my destiny? Like, for that life? How do I achieve what I need to achieve as maybe a pig? Well, because a pig does what a pig does. And that's exactly the point, I guess. So each caste has its particular duty or set of obligations called dharma. The individual's wishes do not matter. It is better to do your duty badly than to do someone else's duty well. So this is huge. This is why when it comes to things such as martyrism, usually it's looked down upon, whereas if you're martyred as for Christ, that's that as well, especially in the Islam belief. Martyrism is good. It gets you certain things in the next in heaven, in Islam. So, but this is a little bit different. You don't, because if you were a martyr, then you're going outside of what you probably should be doing. So that, amongst other things, basically you want to live the life that you're put in, and that's the caste, which we're going to talk about, is basically classes of that you're born into. So there's different classes, just as there's anywhere. You have just say in America, you've got your rich, your middle class, your poor. Well, it's like that, except for it's based on more than just how much money you have, basically. And the caste that you are put in, if you try and go outside of that, or try and do something that is outside of what your role is in life, well, that's actually going to hurt your dharma, which is going to create bad karma, which in your reincarnation, your next life, is going to go backwards rather than forwards. So when it comes to, okay, let's say I turn into a polar bear, and I'm a murdering polar bear that kills multiple animals. Well, how is my soul going to go in a better direction rather than a worse direction? And that's basically because that is your role in life. That is what a polar bear is supposed to do. And so if that's what he's supposed to do, if a polar bear decided to be a vegetarian, he probably would actually have his reincarnation would probably be worse rather than better. So if that kind of makes sense, it kind of clears that up a little bit as far as, okay, well, like if you're basically destined for you have no choice as a certain type of animal. Well, technically, it's not about your choice. It's what you're put back into. That's what you're supposed to be. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Hindus believe in the concept of dharma, or religious duty. Dharma requires each person to act rightly, piously, and ethically towards his, her family, clan, community, and universe. So moral actions ensures good karma and cosmic harmony. Dharma is defined individually for each person, but among these mentioned in the scriptures are nonviolence, non-stealing, disciplining desire, avoiding lust and greed, curbed arrogance and anger, not lying, avoiding injustice, shunning and undoing an evil company. Hindus are called to be pure in mind, body, and speech. So this is talking more about is your human form. So these are things. So these are what create their morals. So these are things you're not supposed to be doing, and these are all in the Vedas, or their scriptures. So, mind, love, mankind. So it is pure in body, mind, and speech. Love mankind, seek contentment, culture, devotion, development, forbearance, give charitably. Study the scriptures, perform penance, and sacrifice. So these are all things that you want to work towards. Even things like physical things on the earth, money, activity things, those aren't looked down upon. As long as there's a balance, correct balance, those things are actually good, and those help you achieve your dharma or your moksha, which we're going to talk about. Every person has his or her path. Worship God, and your dharma will become clear. So if you're doing what you're supposed to do, your dharma will be clear as far as what your role in your life is. Kama, sensual pleasure, and artha, material prosperity, should be balanced with dharma. So again, those are things that are just not necessarily spiritual things, but as long as they are balanced correctly, those are actually good. So they also encourage the practice of yoga, which combines physical and mental exercises to reach a state of tranquility. So yoga, it's not all, there's four different types of yoga, and it's not necessarily all the American version of yoga. However, I hope it kind of explains where yoga did start. So if that is your thing, I don't know, this is where you're getting your yoga from. But it's supposed to create oneness between your soul, and there's a lot that, when it comes to yoga, a lot of worshiping whatever your god is, so a lot of devils. So probably not something you want to get into. But you have the these are the four different types of paths to achieve moksha, so moksha, I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. I think I did, but moksha is basically is the end of your reincarnation. Once you've achieved the highest level, and once you've become one with Brahma. So you've gotten to the point where you have achieved, and I'm not sure what that level is. I don't think they know what that level is, but that's what you're working towards, and eventually you are received, and that's the end goal. So these are really important when it comes to achieving moksha. So very important in their rituals, their religions. You have Bhakti Yoga, path of devotion. These aren't, again, some of it is your physical, the way you do things. You take your time and you do your breathing, and you sit in a closet and do whatever. That can be part of it, but that's not exactly what that means. So this involves developing deep love and devotion to a chosen deity, like Krishna or Shiva. Through prayers, chants, and selfless services, devotees seek to cultivate a connection with the divine. So that type of yoga is path of devotion. So that's more about the things that you do, your prayers, as it says, the chants and the selfless services. So that's more the deeds, the actions that you do, not necessarily a spiritual one. Then you have Jnana Yoga, which path of knowledge. This path emphasizes intellectual inquiries and self-realization through rigorous study of scriptures and meditation. Yogis seek to understand the true nature of reality and their own oneness with the divine Brahma. So that's your whole goal in that form of yoga, is to find the understanding between you and the God Brahma. Karma Yoga, path of action. This path focuses on performing actions without attachment to the fruits of those actions by dedicating one's work to something higher than oneself. Karma Yoga strive for inner purification and liberation. So basically, just of karma in yoga form. So that's the same thing. Raja Yoga, path of meditation. This path involves disciplined physical and mental practices, including postures, breathing exercises, meditation. Through Raja Yoga, practitioners aim to achieve mastery over their mind bodies, leading a state of enlightenment and liberation. So that's kind of, that one is more of the one that we would probably see a lot of in America. Basically the breathing exercises and the positions that you put yourself in, and it's supposed to help cleanse you and help your spirit and all those things. But again, a lot of times that whole goal is turned around, and you're doing that for a lot of the wrong reasons. So what happens when you achieve moksha? So again, this is what your whole purpose is in your life, is to get to this point. This is your soul goes through multiple to eventually get to this point. So achieving moksha means detaching yourself from the materialistic or existence and, sorry, it's small, achieving divine bliss. Once you achieve moksha, you find unity with the Supreme Being and free yourself from the circle of birth and rebirth. You lose the sense of your ego and gain realization of the divine self. So again, you're basically one with what that means exactly. I still don't know, but basically that's what you're getting. Hindu philosophy believes that samsara is the source of bondage and misery. The quality of your present life is based on your past life karma. You will reap as you sow. Good deeds, charity, living your life according to the rules of Dharma is supremely important. This ensures that your next life would be easygoing. However, the aim in human life is always to achieve moksha or salvation, so you can free yourself from the misery of birth and rebirth. Once you achieve moksha, you break the circle of birth and rebirth and attain true knowledge of the self and divine bliss. So as I'm saying here, I don't understand it. Well, I guess nobody else does, because you're not going to understand it until you achieve moksha. After obtaining moksha, the soul loses his gender-linked body and enters. This is part where it gets a little, trying to understand it is near impossible, but Vaikuntha or Moksha Loka, or the liberated world. This is the ultimate realm of Lord Vishnu. So I guess basically realm of Lord Vishnu, the God, that's where you're going to end up. Again, what that is, I guess, we don't necessarily know all the details of heaven either. So that's kind of, but they're hoping that it's going to be something amazing, and it's supposed to be. Where am I at? Yeah, Vaishnava texts define the Moksha Loka as the liberating space, the highest region beyond darkness, and the circle of birth and rebirth. In Vaikuntha, Lord Vishnu resides with his consort Lakshmi and Shri. This is the place of the ultimate bliss. And Vaishnava texts define Vaikuntha in glowing terms, where residents in their divine bodies float around. So I guess that's what you do. No soul ever returns once it reaches this point and obtains moksha. It is impossible to physically travel to Vaikuntha, but can only travel to there and the moksha land through the liberation of the spirit. So once you're there, you can't come back, but you can't get there until you achieve moksha. So that's basically their version of that's what happens when you achieve that point. Again, when you achieve that point, I guess it's different for everybody, but there is no set time for that. So then you have the worshiping of Hinduism. So these are kind of the things that you will see if you ever go to India, if you ever go watch somebody who worships. These are the things that they're probably going to be doing. Hindus usually perform worship to achieve some specific end or to integrate the body, the mind, and the spirit in order to help the performer evolve to a higher being. So you have puja, an alternate transitional puja, Sanskrit reverence, honor, adoration, or worship, is a religious ritual performed by Hindus is a popular one in offering of various deities, distinguished persons, or special guests. It is done in a variety of occasions and settings, from daily puja done in the home to temple ceremonies and large festivals, or to begin a new venture. Puja ritual is performed by Hindus worldwide. Very popular. You have the darsana or the darshan, with a Sanskrit term meaning sight, seeing or beholding, vision, apparition, or glimpse. It is most commonly used for the theophany? Manifestation visions of the divine in Hindu worship. Example of a deity, especially in image form, or of a very holy person or artifact. So basically an idol. One could also receive darshana, or a glimpse of the deity in the temple, or from a great saintly person, such as a great guru. You have arti. Arti is generally performed 1 to 5 times daily, and usually at the end of puja. In the South India, or bhajan session in North India, it involves the circulating of an arti plate or arti lamp around a person or deity, and is generally accompanied by the singing of songs in praise of the diva or person. Many visions exist. So whatever your thing is, that's what you're worshiping at and singing songs to. In doing so, the plate or the lamp is supposed to acquire the power of the deity. The priest circulates the plate or the lamp to all those present. They cup their downturned hands over the lamp and then raise their palm to their forehead. The purification blessing passes from the diva image to the flame and has now been passed to the devotee. So, just something, I guess, a few things that they do here. Then you have homa, also known as homan or haven, is the Sanskrit word which refers to a ritual in which making offerings into a consecrated fire in the primary action as present. The words homa or homan, the han are interchangeable with the word yagna. It is performed to please the gods or to obtain certain wishes. An essential element is the sacrificial fire, the divine Agni, which is Agni is a very popular one that a lot of people believe in, and if you ever run into one, it might be a possibility that they actually do believe that. It's, again, very popular. Which other obligations are poured, and everything that is offered into the fire believes to reach the gods. The duration of yajna depends on the type. Some can at least last a few minutes, hours, days, or even some last for years. Some yajnas are performed privately, others with a large group of people or audience. Substances and objects. So, again, you could be turned into that. Plants are one of those things that you might be reincarnated into. So, you have prasad, which is a mental condition of generosity as well as material substance that is first offered to a deity and then consumed. The prasad has the deity blessing residing within it, and the contemporary Hindu religion practice in India, the desire to get prasada and the darshan, and the two major motivations of pilgrimage and temple visits. Okay, so you have the tilaka, which substances and objects here. So the tilaka is a mark worn on the forehead. You will see this a lot in India. In some cases, the upper part of the head. Tilaka may be worn on a daily basis or several religious occasions, only depending on different customs. So, I'll finish first. The tilaka symbolizes the third eye, or the mind's eye, associated with many Hindu gods. I forget the main one. There's one main god that has the eye. I don't know if it might be Vishnu. So that's what that's representing. And the idea of meditation and spiritual enlightenment. In the past, tilakas are usually worn by gods, priests, ascetics, and worshippers, but now in a common practice for most Hindus. It can express which Hindu tradition one follows. It may be made with sandalwood paste, ashes, kumkum, and sindu, clay, and other substances. So this one's a little bit, and I put it on the side here, not to be confused with Bindai. So this is based on your religion. This is the mark that says what God you believe in. Bindai, which is worn on almost every single married woman in India. You'll see on most women. That's most because it's for marriage, and it represents energy, and it's supposed to protect your husband and your family. That's why they wear that. And then I think they change the color or whatever when their husband dies. That was another one of the rituals. Again, we're not going to get too much into those, but like one of them used to be when your husband died, as you're burning the ashes, the wife would sacrifice herself and jump into it. And that kind of died a while back, but I think it was, I don't know, within the last couple hundred years, there's a couple people that still, they believe that's going to get them somewhere, then that's something they'll do. But kind of sad to see that. Tree worship. This is a strange one. But again, it's a plant. So they see anything as this is Brahma. So they respect everything. And that's one thing that you'll notice about Hindus is they'll respect no matter what, and that's why they respect you as a person. So whatever you believe. So if you are witnessing to them, understand that, and understand that they respect you, so maybe respect them a little bit too. There are three species of sacred trees: the pipal, the banyan, and the neem. The trees of the neem trees will be wrapped in decorations, red cloth that has been offered to a goddess, and a brass human mask will be added to the tree. Decorative paint is applied to the face, while garlands and marigolds and jasmine flowers are strung around the tree. People worship the neem tree as Shitalaya, or the good health and protection of the dangerous sickness. So just another one they believe. Festivals are very popular. A lot of festivals. Again, these aren't required, but they're things that if you want to achieve better karma, this is probably something you will do. Here's a few. More than a few of them. Don't worry about that. We'll skip over that, but a lot of festivals. Same with pilgrimages. Again, we're not going to go through those either, but pilgrimages are the same way. Not required. However, if you are able to take them or able to go on them, that's something that your God will really appreciate. So the caste system. So we're just finishing up here, but the caste system is basically your classes. So that's what it's called, the caste. So this is what you're born into. And what you're born into is what you're born into. There's no going outside of that. So if you're born as let's say you're the lowest of the low, and we'll name it in a second, but you're the low, your goal is not to achieve the priesthood or the spiritual leaders, because that's not your dharma. So if you were to try and do that, that is bad karma, and that would result in bad reincarnation. So what is the caste system? The caste is a division of society based on occupation, family, lineage. Hindu caste system recognizes 4 distinct classes or divisions among people based on these criteria and enforces it through a rigid code of conduct that was specific to each class and rooted in law book of the later Vedic period. The 4 main castes recognized by traditional Hindu society based primarily on hereditary occupation. They're not quite as enforced as they used to be. Again, everything modernizes a little bit. So what they were, not so much the same. If it was like you go outside of that, you're in big trouble, especially when it comes to roles, male and female. That was big. As a female, you definitely, a lot of submissive, a lot of things that you couldn't do. Things like that changed a lot, especially now. So you have number 1 class, the Brahmins. So these are the priestly class who are entitled to study the Vedas, perform rites and rituals for themselves and others, and obligated to observe the sacraments. They are the middlemen between God, the gods, again, not Brahma, gods, because there isn't that connection between Brahma and men. They act of temple priests and invoke gods on behalf of others. According to Manu, the lawmaker, a Brahmin was reincarnated, is an incarnation of Dharma, sacred tradition, born to serve and protect the Dharma. So this is your highest level that you could be born into. This is where you were born. Your next, as long as you achieve what you're supposed to, you're looking good for your next life. Then you have the Kshatriyas. They are the warrior class who are commanded by tradition to protect the people, bestow the gifts to Brahmins, offer sacrifices to gods, ancestors, study the Vedas, dispense justice, and according to Manushriti, abstain themselves from pleasures. Then you have the Vaisyas. They are the merchant and the peasant classes. I mean, this kind of goes along with what you would if you happen to be born in that. If you're middle class, you're upper class, you have those benefits. It's kind of the same idea. These are expected to tend cattle, offer sacrifices, study the Vedas, trade, lend money, cultivate the land. They had the right to perform and participate in certain Vedic rituals, but they were not allowed to marry women of the highest caste. So that was the thing that was very much enforced. You're not really allowed to marry outside of that either. Shudras, the labor class, those whose duty is to serve the other three classes, they're not required to observe any Vedic rituals or Vedic rituals. The Samskaras, except a few, they were allowed to study the Vedas or even hear of the sacred chants. They were not allowed to eat food in the company of higher castes or marry their women. So this was this was about the lowest level that you could be. And then as time went on, it started to get a little bit, they created another level. And that is the untouchable or the impure. Chandalas. The lowest of the Shudras were called Chandalas. The impure ones, they were treated as untouchables because their gory religious practices, I don't know where I got that from. Sacrifices, magical rites, and unclean habits. In ancient times, they were not allowed to enter a village or city during a daytime or walk in the same street where men and other castes walked, even if their shadow was considered impure and their very sight is a bad omen. They lived mostly in the fringes of society, unknown and cared for, the following a religion of their own and working mostly in the graveyards and cremation grounds as hunters, butchers, and professional cleaners of human waste. So low of the low. And that's probably because you did something in your past life. That's what you were born into. So you hope to get out of that the next one. So how it was enforced, hereditary, again, you're born into it. Caste rules were enforced strictly through the fear of political and religious authority. Marriage, prohibited marriage outside of one's caste to avoid intermixture of the castes. So then it get too confusing if you did that. So couldn't do that. Which were considered to be a high sign of decline or dharma, and the very reason why the caste system was devised. So again, a lot of things have changed since then, but these were kind of the basic beliefs. Sacrifices, I guess, were another one that were one of those things that has changed a lot. Most Hindus are vegan, so they don't eat meat. Vegan. So anything meat related. Some do. There was, again, certain rituals that you would do prior, but basically what was happening was like a cow is a very sacred animal to Hindus. It is because of what it does. It gives more than it takes, and it's considered a very spiritual one. But there used to be sacrifices, especially of the cow, which if you did it correctly, that cow would then go to, and the god accepted it, and everything went smoothly. The god would accept it, and that cow would then be reincarnated at a next level, which would be a good level. If the god didn't accept it, something went wrong with how the sacrifice was done, well, then probably he didn't accept it, so the cow's going even farther down. Marriages between a higher caste men and lower caste women were less objectable than marriage between Sudras males and higher caste females. So it's easier to go down than up. But some symbols. Swastika is a very popular one for Hindus, so don't be necessarily alarmed if you see one. Basically, the swastika, I put in a favorable outcome or future success. That's basically, so it's a good thing, and it was a good thing, and then kind of got, after Hitler, it fell apart. But it's still used today, and it's still a very popular symbol that they use amongst a few other ones here. And then, yeah, that's it. So, again, we didn't get too deep, especially time-wise. If you ever do want to do a study on it, it is fun. I'm putting this stuff together, and like, you start going down a bunny trail, and you can't get out of it because you're so deep into this, and there's so many other things outside of it. So it's very, very broad. When it does come to, if you ever do meet a Hindu, maybe this will help a little bit. Maybe this will motivate you a little bit to actually study it a little bit more. It is, again, a fun study. If you do meet a Hindu, as far as witnessing to a Hindu, that's really the goal of these classes here. So if you do meet one, as far as how to go about witnessing to them, basically the same way. But again, respect is one big thing that they see. So, you yelling and screaming at them, probably not going to ever listen to you. But really, Hinduism now is very much tradition. There used to be a lot more entailed, but now it's, well, you pick your God, and that's what you're born into. That's what your family does. A lot of witch doctor stuff that they do, and there's a lot of things that really, in the end, they're looking for something still. And they're worshiping gods that are basically just idols. So they are searching, and if there is opportunities to witness to them. So if you are able to, let me know, because that would be a kind of exciting thing. But so yeah, I hope that helps a little bit, and we're all set.
These and thous in the King James Bible. And imagine all this, being a follower of this, how do you even understand? You don't have any hope. It's a mass confusion. Hopefully now you'll understand more what the missionaries in India have to deal with. If you say, I don't know that I'll ever meet a Hindu. Who's ever called a technical support center or anything like that? You met a Hindu, most likely. And so if you have opportunities, sometimes you want to try it out, you can ask something about something. They have to kind of talk to you anyway. So I did this with a guy a few years back, and we talked for about 15 minutes about his religion, and then I got to share with him some things about the peace of God. So thank you, Caleb, for a massive amount of research in this. And yes, if you are if your head's swimming with all the information, just imagine trying to be a follower of this and never knowing anything about if you're really on the right track or not. I mean, we're going to go back and we're going to have some pretzels and I guess probably pretty vegan stuff, but if you eat something that would be something of me, imagine asking first, has this got any, I don't want to eat Uncle So-and-so. I mean, the constant fear of all this type of stuff. Thank God, ours is so simple. The truth is simple. Jesus died, was buried, and rose again. It's him, not us. And that's, again, something we thank for. So thank you very much, Caleb, for that. Why don't you pray for our fellowship and food, and we'll